Welcome to Magic.ai, the operating system for hospitality. At Magic, we know an operating system is more than just software and systems. It's about people, because hospitality is nothing without them. So supporting the hospitality community is our number one goal.
I think there needs to be more of a support system. Like, you have to love this business and you have to love every aspect of it, including sharing tribal knowledge on what is successful and also tribal knowledge of what is a failure.
Founded by lifelong experts, we're building the place where everyone in hospitality, from seasoned pros to first-timers, can gather, share, and grow together. Plus, we're crafting scalable tools and AI-supported software to boost your business. Dive into our vibrant community platform packed with meaningful conversations and robust tools and templates designed just for you. Need more? Our custom software solutions have got you covered. From recruiting and staffing to digital playbooks and dashboards, we're working on building a unique hub of resources unlike any other. Magic is your single point of origin for important conversations, accessible tools, valuable insights, and more. Join us at magic.ai. The evolution of hospitality is here.
Human beings are hardwired to help other human beings. We are part of the same pack. It comes from our animal DNA and in our lizard brains. I am very concerned about this trend because we seem to be ping-ponging back and forth, and we're headed back to the old way of doing things because TV is getting too subscription model oriented.
Andrew Zimmern is an Emmy and James Beard award-winning TV personality, chef, writer, and passionate global citizen. As the creator, executive producer, and host of the Bizarre Foods franchise, Andrew Zimmern's driven by food, What's Eating America, Family Dinner, Wild Game Kitchen, and The Zimmern List. You can also find him judging Iron Chef, Quest for an Iron Legend on Netflix, the Silos Baking Competition on HBO Max, and mentoring young chefs on Food Network's All-Star Academy. Andrew is the founder and chairman of Intuitive Content, named one of the top 100 production companies in the world by Real Screen, and Passport Hospitality, a restaurant and food service development company. He is a founding member of the Coalition for Sustainable Aquaculture and Independent Restaurant Coalition.
If we allow Main Street USA restaurants to go under because we make terms that are too hard on them and we make it impossible for people to succeed in this business that's already hard enough, we are going to see a massive drop-off of restaurants. Everyone thought, COVID is going to happen. May happen post-COVID because of our lack of attention and care for those people in that industry. You become the most excellent person you can, and your business will follow after that lead. If you're in a bad mood, you can all do all the table touching you want. You're just going to communicate negativity. That's all you're going to communicate. It all comes from pursuing sobriety in my life. When I first got sober, 32 and a half years ago, my sponsor and my 12-step gurus and all the people I paid attention to said, if you don't do service work, you're going to drink. And, there are different things that I think people who've been around recovery a lot when there's a newcomer involved. For some, it's like go to a meeting every day for a year. For others, it's, and yes, do the other stuff, do service, read the book, help others. You got to do that. But everyone has their own. I was a meeting junkie. I would sometimes go to 2 meetings a day. I loved it. It helped me so much. But people wiser than me at the time looked at me and said, you are the most self-centered, selfish user of people and taker of things we bumped into in a long time. And that's how I had run my life up until I got sober. But that followed me. It wasn't like I put down the bottle and all of a sudden I was no longer a selfish user of people and taker of things. So they really felt for me, they said, service work, you got to do service work and get out of your own head. When I did for those that are listening, the idea, and it's been true for me, is when I'm helping someone else who has a lot of problems, I'm not thinking about me and my problems, and I get a built-in sense of gratitude from that. And they really felt that I needed those things. So the one thing that I heard, because I tried to keep it simple because I'm really dense, was, and I asked myself, I said, what's the rule? Is there a rule here, a guiding principle? He said, yes. When you were asked to do something, service work in sobriety, say yes. And so I'm like, okay, great. So I'm stumbling through my sobriety. I'm like 5-6 years sober, something like that. And I'm at the Wilson House in Dorset, Vermont, and the house that Bill Wilson grew up in. And there's an old timer there who had like 55 years of sobriety, and he was part of our little group that was there for the weekend doing some work on themselves. And I made some comment about the 10th and 11th step and stuff like that. And this guy at the break, I'll never forget it, put me over the hood of a car and made me memorize a portion of this book, this passage that basically says, when you're angry, resentful, jealous, afraid, any of these horrific things are going through your mind, or you're behaving that way, you have to do 4 things. Say a prayer immediately, apologize if need be. Then, of course, right, think of doing something, most importantly, think of doing this number 3, think of doing something for another person. And I had, I guess, in this meeting talked about, doing something for another alcoholic. And this person said it doesn't have to be. It says other places in the book, it very specifically says help another alcoholic. Here it does not. And I was kind of floored by all that. So I came back and I was talking about this with my sponsors, and you've got to broaden this. So, when someone asks you to do so much to the upset of everyone who works around me, my board, people who work here in our offices, where Matt has been many times, much to their frustration, I say yes to every request. Now, I have prudently over the last 5 or 6 years put some boundaries around that. But if there's a food connection, or a child connection, or a mental health connection, I say yes. So along the way, and this is really a fascinating story, I get a call from the people at One. This is 27 years ago. They say, Bono wants to talk to you. And I'm like, get the fuck out of here. I mean,
One Foundation.
Crazy? Yeah. So it turns out that they were trying to get the Electrify Africa Act passed, and they had a lot of people testifying in front of Congress. But someone on their executive committee said, we need people who have actually been to Africa to talk about it in a different way than some of these scientists and economists and these other people would do about the importance of building the grid, electrical grid in Africa. And I had seen that firsthand because I had again, pursuing my career, putting one step in front of the other, had created this show called Bizarre Foods and had spent a couple of years shooting and spent a lot of time in Africa making TV. And so I had experience there. So I joined them and I went and I testified in DC, and the bill didn't get passed because it was part of a big omnibus package, and people just weren't going to vote for this whole, 20, 30, 40 different laws wrapped up into one package. So the idea was to try to separate it. So we needed a Republican, hopefully someone who was very, 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 very on the far right, and any Democrat to sponsor this in the Senate. And I went and I talked to my senator at the time, Al Franken, who I had a good relationship with as a friend. And I said, would you co-sponsor this? He said, yes. Do you know any really bad guys, who would never sponsor this in a million years?
Bad
and
guys.
He's like, yeah. Well, just people who would never know, whose voting record would imply that helping Africans would be something just way, way down the radar screen. And he said, yeah, how about Corker of Tennessee? And I was like, Bob Corker? No way. We marched down the hallway, and because Bob represented an energy state, he understood what energy could do for everybody. He said, absolutely. He was a fiscal conservative. And I learned that, kind of like many other things, if you find out some common ground, great things can happen. Corker understood that we were giving lots of food aid and it was dying in boxes because it couldn't be refrigerated. We were giving medicine, very expensive medicine, and it was expiring because it couldn't be refrigerated. So the two of them got this, sponsored this bill. It became a law, and then I was hooked. I mean, like any other junkie, I was just like, oh my God, I helped do something. But it was through that I met Charlize Theron and joined the Charlize Theron Africa Outreach Project. It was through working on Africa stuff and hunger issues that got me involved with everything from No Kid Hungry to sitting on a bunch of boards here in the United States. Then that work got me noticed by the United Nations World Food Program, the International Rescue Committee, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I just kept saying yes. Environmental Working Group. We passed a lot of laws the last 3 years to help a lot of people. Co-founding the Independent Restaurant Coalition allowed me to help make a lot of changes in laws. One of the things that I'm proudest of is, 17 of us co-founded the IRC, Independent Restaurant Coalition. And at the point in time when our 45th president created this PPP program, people forget the original PPP law did not help restaurants at all. And the reason was your business had to be open to be qualifying for PPP. All the governors in all the states, because restaurants are where people gather and get together and food service happens and people are breathing and amongst each other and in closed quarters, closed restaurants. Well, I shouldn't say everywhere. There were some states in the South that never did. But the vast majority, I think it was 46 states, had closures. And Minnesota was one of them. And I remember calling my congressman at the time, Dean Phillips. He still is my congressman, I guess, until the November election. But longtime friend, close friend. And I said, we need to fix this thing. And he was a member of a group that met once a week for lunch of people on both sides, because he really believed in the power of gathering, even with those you disagree with, to try to find some kind of middle ground. And he, in fact, connected with Chip Roy, Republican of Texas, another House member. And he and Chip co-sponsored what became the fix, the amendment to the PPP law that allowed restaurants to qualify. And, stuff like that, just, I don't know, it's service work of a different level, but I think it's really important. And I believe if you're lucky enough to have been given a platform from which you can do good things, if you don't, you are missing the whole point of being in life. One thing that I learned while making Bizarre Foods is I had the opportunity, I met with 2 popes, I met with the Dalai Lama, I've met with spiritual leaders all around the world, some of whom are just shamans and little tribes that are protected. Some have a big platform like the infallible vicar of God on earth, His Holiness the Pope. And I asked all of them the exact same thing, which was, what is our meaning? Why are we here on earth? Because I figured if I had the opportunity to meet these people, even for 5 minutes, I better ask them, kind of like Bill Murray in Caddyshack, but a little more intentional.
That's the question you need answered.
That's right. And as an art history major, that was why so much art was created over the world. What is our relationship to nature, to our community, to everywhere, right? And it's been going on since we first started drawing on cave walls. And all of them said it's to love each other and be useful to those people around us. And they laughed at me like, come on, of course that's the meaning of life. They all agree on that. Every spiritual leader, large and small. Everyone agrees that that's why we're here on planet. So I was like, okay. So I just put that all together and I said yes. And you say yes enough times and you learn how to be effective and incredible things come to pass. So I truly am just a lucky schmuck that happened to be in a position where, to save his own skin, he had to say yes to sweeping out church basements and putting away chairs after AA meetings. And now that service work has just expanded into other places. So that's really what I spend I've just spent literally the last 2.5 weeks running like a lunatic, starting a little bit before UN General Assembly Climate Week and through till yesterday, on this fall swing around the states, working on that kind of stuff, which is very exciting and can be very heady and intoxicating. So you got to kind of be careful. But man, I mean, UN General Assembly Climate Week, I started out going about 9 years ago when I was just, another person following other people. I never was in the room. Then I got into the room and I learned that there's actually another room, secret, way before the room.
The secret room.
And this year was the first year that I was in that room, and to voice opinion in front of world leaders. I mean, I was seated at this private breakfast at the Clinton Global Initiative one morning, and to the left of me was the person who runs the bank for the royal family in Saudi Arabia, controls trillions of dollars, and had the opportunity to talk to her about growing a blue economy in Africa, which I think is very important as the green economy there disappears. We won't be able to farm Africa by 2050, but Africa is the largest island, if you think about it that way. And it's really manned by artisanal fishermen. They contribute only about 4% to the global economy in terms of fishing export, but they could be contributing 50%. But if we just found a way to get them to get more fish in the boat and get them electricity and ice and coolers down at the docks, we could grow a massive blue economy for Africa that World Bank, other people would invest in. So I wanted to talk to her. And then there's a guy to my right and everyone's being shushed down and he's eating a bagel and I'm eating a bagel. And I'm like, hey, nice bagel. And I introduced I'm Andrew Zimmern. And, he introduced himself, and I didn't notice all the people standing behind them. I was the only person in the room that didn't have 6 people standing, assistants, security, blah, 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 blah. And I'm telling, he goes, what do you, and I said, oh, and he goes, why are you here? And I said, well, I do a lot of work in Africa, this, that, and the other thing. And he goes, oh, so do I. And I said, oh, what do you do? He says, I'm the president of Kenya. And I was like, oh, great to meet you. I mean, that was I've got the head of the Royal Bank of Saud on one side and the president of Kenya on another. And I just had to laugh that this is where saying yes to service work had brought me. But yeah, it's the best part of my life and certainly the coolest thing that I do for sure.
Yeah. And I was at Farm Aid, I think one of the weeks that in Saratoga, one of the weeks that the UN Global Assembly was happening. And I was thinking, because I knew you were there and I totally forgot to connect you with my sister, Katie Porter, who is like the chief strategist for the Melinda Gates Foundation and program director for them. And she was there as well. And I was like, oh my God, I got to connect them. And I totally forgot. But that's amazing that, you just, next thing you know, you turn around and these sorts of conversations are happening, right? And would have never thought that you would be there.
I've been sober and in recovery for 16 years.
Congrats.
And thanks. I celebrate at the beginning of the month. And this is like a meeting. I'm loving this. Is fantastic hearing about service work. I remember the first time that I heard that service work could be outside of program. And it was in the context of my family. And somebody said, you don't have to just be of service to other alcoholics. You can be of service in your family. When you go to whatever function, think about what you can bring to the function instead of what you can get out of it. And I remember that was really the first time my mind shifted. They talk about the shift of the alcoholic mind. And I remember thinking, holy shit, it's not just about me and what I get from situations. It's what can I bring? And I too struggle with saying yes and when to possibly say no. And actually, just before this call, my friend who's in recovery is taking care of my son in the other room. And I said, do you think, because I like to check in with people, right? And I said, do you think I have the capacity to take on another sponsee? And she said, actually, I do. And I said, great. Okay. Now, because sometimes I say yes too many times and then I'm, run into the ground, but it's good to have other people around who can say, yeah, I think you have the ability to take that on and say yes. And
It's
yeah.
interesting that you say that, and only in the context of another person. I think, and this is, I think, a human frailty, not just, although I think it's magnified amongst people with different isms. Human beings lately, over the last 50 years, are being designed culturally to be insular in our own little
100%.
worlds, in our own little cliques, in our own narrow little space, and less curious about the world around us. And I think the key to life, and I even believe this with business, whether it's restaurants, whether it's food business projects, whether it's my production company, whatever it is, asking for help, asking opinions, listening is the thing that we need to do more of. And there's all those little memes, if you follow a lot of business leadership stuff on Instagram, that's like, you should 99% listening and 1% talking and all this other stuff. And it confuses a lot of people because they just want an action item that's simple that they can write on their hand and just remember. And it's just like, I always practice sentence, I don't know how to blank. Can you help me? And it's that can you help me part that is
asking for help
is just the most important thing in the world. And we're getting worse and worse at it as a society. And that concerns me, although now it's being popular to ask that question. So hopefully it's the turnaround and we're on that question is on the ascendancy. But yeah, being asked, human beings are hardwired to help other human beings. We are part of the same pack. It comes from our animal DNA and in our lizard brains. If someone asks me for help, invariably we say yes, or we say, I don't know how to do that, but let me see if I know someone that knows how to do that. And I think all of us leaning into that, it's especially true in the restaurant community. We learn, kind of like a sports team, that it is a team effort, right? There's people who serve, there's people behind a bar, there's people who clean up, there's people who cook, there's people who prep. There's an ecosystem within a restaurant that is that teaches a lot of us, if our ears are open, that helping someone else helps us all achieve our goals. It's one thing I loved about cooking, and what has helped save me in my own sobriety through just chopping celery and cutting onions is there's always something on a prep list that someone else can help you with, where someone is in the weeds and someone else is just, wants to go out in the alley and smoke a cigarette and bullshit. And I think bringing that attitude of team and what I can do for the person next to me and service work into the hospitality world is of vital importance.
Yep, totally agree. You mentioned you mentioned your production company, and I want to talk a little bit about that and your life in media, specifically television. Media is in a really kind of challenging and interesting place today. It's more of a dominant force in our lives as consumers than it's ever been, but the format has changed, right? And the world is digital and it's bite-sized and it's like nanosecond attention spans, right? A million scrolling headlines per minute, the doom scroll that we're all familiar with. Can you tell us a little bit about the world of food media and some of the challenges that you see in it right now, and how Intuitive Concepts, which is your production company, has worked to kind of get across the fray of all that, and what sets you guys apart?
Sure. Intuitive. Well, let's talk about the beginning of that first. The media world changes every 60 days. As a production company, we have an agent that represents our production company, right? And we get these lists from networks. They send them every month out as to what they're looking for, what they're not looking for, what's changed, what has been picked up recently as a show, where they're going. So that you have, it's to inspire production companies and talent to come to them with ideas. It's also to set boundaries and say, don't bother pitching us on a flower show. We're not doing flowers. So we see those all the time. Every month. And I can tell you that some months a network will say, do not pitch us any food at all. Nothing with food and travel. We only are doing mystery and, dating drama or whatever. And then the following month, they're like, we don't want any dating drama. Because it's changing that fast. They're like, just give us food. It's like, oh my God, you want to pull your hair out. So that's changing. The tech is changing. Where viewers are looking at things is changing.
Totally.
I make, I'll give you my personal experience with this. I have two shows that I'm making right now, Wild Bean Kitchen and Fuel to Fire. They are both ITK shows, in the kitchen shows, dump and stir shows, chef behind a cutting board show, whatever you want to call them. They both have a first, second, and third window for airing because it's harder and harder to raise money, even for an inexpensive ITK show shot in the Midwest. Though both of them air internationally, for want of a better expression, because anyone can watch them online. And one of them is aired by Tastemade. Well, they're both aired on Tastemade. I mean, here's the question, right? Tastemade, it's not really a network. It's not an app. It's a thing. I've called them platforms, right? Now you can, if you are getting your television, if you've cut the cord, no matter what service you have that brings shows into your monitor, I'm choosing these words very specifically. You can select Tastemade and put it onto your system, whether you get it through YouTube, Apple TV, whatever your deal is, Amazon Fire Stick, it's that you can put Tastemade on there. So you can literally choose to make Tastemade as a channel on your TV. I am very concerned about this trend because we seem to be ping-ponging back and forth, and we're headed back to the old way of doing things because TV is getting too subscription model oriented, where you have to choose. Some are free because they use advertising dollars. You remember when we were all kids and they're just a handful? I mean, I'm older than you. I'm older than you both put together, but there used to be a time when I grew up in the 60s, there were 5 stations in New York. Yeah. Then cable came in, but cable only had like 5 or 6 channels.
So are you saying you're concerned
now
because
it's limitless?
Are you saying you're concerned because of the consolidation?
No, the consolidation already happened.
Okay.
Now we're seeing the response to that consolidation. The three of us could start a platform like Tastemade tomorrow, aggregate content, build it up if we had enough investment, make a widget available to put onto anyone's thing, and we could be airing Andrew, Matt, and Carolyn TV, whatever, AMC. The reason streamers became so valuable to so many people was because you could watch premium content for a small amount of money. But remember at the time, the complaint before people were cutting the cord was, oh my God, my cable bill is $200 a month just to watch TV, right? So the idea was join Amazon, have them be who you get TV from, and you get all these other channels free, and it's going to be $30 a month, and you're going to be able to see everything.
Right.
Well, that really hasn't worked out. So now to watch the sports teams I want to watch, I have to subscribe to Fox Sports North, my local teams. And if I want to watch things like, outdoor channel, it's free, but that's only in 40% of the country, but I can subscribe to it online. And we are all it's the same thing that's happening like with Substack and all these newsletters. It used to be you could just read the newspaper or peruse it all online or follow people on what was Twitter and get all. Now you have to subscribe to 300 things. People are getting subscription aversion, right?
Yeah.
So you better figure out what your advertising model is going to be. Otherwise, you're going to lose out on audience. So on one hand, going niche is a great survival mechanism. We tried that and really focused on food and travel. Then we broadened to do doc, murder, crime, and a lot of different categories to survive, because as a production company, we are knowing what's happening years before it happens to you. But the same thing is going to happen to the general public. Niche is not going to work anymore. You need to go broad, but broad is too expensive because you're subscribing to 300 things. So now these big streamers and networks are doing what's called bundling, where when you get one thing, you get 100 other options built into that cost. Well, that's what we gave up 20 years ago in favor of cable. And the early years of cable were all about bundling.
Totally.
So the confusion, I think look, it's got a Quicksilver-like element to it, but it's also a very traditional media format, and we're slowly returning to more traditional media formats. I do think ultimately there will be 4 or 5 entities where you see 99% of your content, which to me sounds exactly like TV when in the 60s and 70s, right? So what goes around comes around. As a maker, the difficulty is trying to figure out what they all want, who's going to be doing verticals that we can do supply good programming for. Intuitive Content is a great company at a point in time where most production companies are closing their doors. We're surviving and making very little small amount of money, but we're alive. So I'm hoping that we're around to keep playing in the game. That's the goal. I want to be a part of the group that whatever 5 years from now, whoever's still standing, I hope we're in there. We get to keep making content as well, because I think shows that we make, like What's Eating in America on MSNBC, Hope in the Water, our doc series that's on PBS right now. A lot of our other programming is really great and really important. And I think shows like mine, with Wild Game Kitchen and Field to Fire and some of the other things we have going on, are 75% entertainment, but still have 25% of intelligence and messaging in there that I think is valuable for people to hear. It is a very, very, very crazy, hectic world. Oddly enough, I've chosen the 2 worst businesses to get into in my life. Ones that if someone came to you, someone who was like an insurance salesman and said, I want to get into the restaurant business, you would say, no, you don't. You don't have experience. You can't do it. It's too hard. It's a pennies business. Restaurants are failing all the time. Every economist will tell you restaurants have you should buy laundromats and vending machines and things that actually have a return on investment, are really solid investment. Don't car washes. Don't get in to the restaurant business.
Car washes.
And probably right behind the restaurant business, or maybe right in front of it, is I'm going to get into the television, what we call television. So, I mean, it is how I wound up there. It's God's getting back at me for something, but I'm addicted to them. I love them. I love those businesses, probably because they are so challenging and are so hard. And I think they have a lot in common. I think lessons that you learn in one place can be applied to the other. I mean, having lived a life in hospitality as well, I have my third leg or the third, leg of my stool sits in the restaurant world. I've not learned anything that I can't apply to the hospitality industry.
Can we talk about Passport Hospitality? Because
Please.
I think that's the third leg of the stool.
Sort of.
So in addition to social causes, food media, production, cookbooks, events, dinners, you have Passport Hospitality, which is a restaurant and food service development company. What are some of the projects that Passport has been involved with, and what is the core of Passport's focus?
Well, that's a great question. We got destroyed during COVID. We opened up a restaurant a Chinese restaurant here in Minneapolis that was, along with a couple other smaller things, I thought something that we could roll out mightily. We opened in November of 2019 and had, a pretty good go of it, but a rough go of it, like most big restaurants. 150 seats, really expensive carrying costs, not the right model. But by February of 2020, we'd figured out, we were in the black month to month. And it was, I was jumping for joy. I'm like, okay, this is going to be great. And then in March of 2020, everything shut down. And we did the math really simply. We're a brand new restaurant. There was no way if we shut our doors for a year, it would take us 10 years to break even and to start to pay back investors. And so we closed that restaurant. Along the way, a lot of the other stuff we were involved in got put on hold. So Passport is the smallest company that I work on from a public-facing standpoint. However, within Passport, I have things like my frozen food line at Walmart. I have one of my companies that's not public-facing, which is private-facing, called KZ Provisioning, that I co-own with Gavin Kaysen. That company only feeds professional sports teams. That's all we do. Is we feed contractually, 3-year contracts, we feed professional sports teams and managers and family room and all that. It's all internal. None of it is public facing. So there's a lot of cool concepts in there. And also my partnerships in a whole bunch of restaurants, known and unknown around the country, is housed within that. So I have some investments with other restaurant groups. I have some strategic partners with other ones. And we still operate. We've had a million setbacks, but we've still been able to keep the first unit of a business that I hope grows called Patty and Frank's in Atlanta alive, which is a hamburger hot dog restaurant concept that is, hopefully now that shooting season and, global social justice advocate season is over, I can turn more of my attention to, because I think there's a lot of upside to that. So yeah, Passport is involved in a lot of things. It's just a lot of stuff that's not as public facing. And part of the reason is how difficult the restaurant business has been, the investment, the risk. It is a lot of work, and the reward is sometimes either very, very small from a cash or incremental standpoint, but also requires 100% focus. I am not able to focus 100% on anything. So I have to be very careful about what business I go into, knowing that. So it's definitely not easy. And the restaurant world has not been easy. We have this facade. I think of it almost like a fiction. And I see it all the time in all the newsletters and the things that come in, and I read about it in Eater. There's this fiction that there's this incredible, vibrant restaurant industry alive and flourishing. And that's true for like 1% of restaurants out there. The vast majority of them are struggling day to day, week to week, month to month, or year to year to survive. And their survival is crucial to the well-being of our society. Without Main Street restaurants, small little independent restaurants in towns and places all over. I'm not talking about hot new restaurants in New York or hot new restaurants in LA or someone that just made the Eater heat map in Chicago. It's everyone else. That is over 5% of our GDP is independent restaurants. It is the number one employer still of single moms, now single dads, of returning citizens, people coming out of jails and institutions. Always has been, of first-time job seekers, but now, interestingly, last-time job seekers. People who are returning to work after retiring because they need a little money to round out the edges. We were always the number one employer of immigrants and also of illegal immigrants who pay taxes, by the way. Very important piece of our economic puzzle. But there are less and less people that we can actually hire that way because of immigration issues left undecided at the federal level. So we have not only a very, very special employee group, 11 plus million of them, it's probably more like 13. We can't let those people go without jobs. Those people are not ones who are going to say, oh, I lost my job at the local restaurant. I'm going to go work in an investment bank and do arbitrage and trade at an arbitrage desk. Said no restaurant employee ever, right? So keeping those restaurants alive so that those people don't go on unemployment is a vital concern.
Yep.
On the other side of things, we represent about 6% of GDP, independent restaurants. If you extrapolate that out and just say, what is the food block? Because restaurants are a place where human beings go to access things that come off a farm, right? It goes through the food chain, winds up not in a supermarket, but at a wholesaler and comes in the back door to a restaurant, right? If you start to add in all of that piece of ag, dairy, if you start to add in all that bit of seafood, its own problem. We only eat about 20% of our own seafood and export the rest. Just crazy. If you start to add in all the food adjacent places, right? A lot of booze is sold in restaurants. A lot of hot dogs are sold at bowling alleys, right? You start to add those incremental percentages. You wind up with something, depends how much of ag you put in there, but you wind up with something between 19 and 25% of GDP. That is staggering.
Yeah.
So if we allow Main Street USA restaurants to go under because we make terms that are too hard on them and we make it impossible for people to succeed in this business that's already hard enough, we are going to see a massive drop off of restaurants that everyone thought, COVID is going to happen, may happen post-COVID because of our lack of attention and care for those people in that industry. When an airline, you hear about an airline going bankrupt, it's the first story on the news, how the Fed is stepping in, someone's putting the thing into Congress. That airline is a $2 billion a year company. Big, right?
Yep.
Dwarfed by the size of independent restaurants as a whole, right? Yep. So we have to start understanding that the restaurant business is a massive thing. As, by the way, if you take non-independent restaurants and fold them in, right? The number becomes even bigger, right? The chains and stuff like that.
Hotels,
so I think
and the restaurants that are in hotels and travel.
Everything.
Yeah.
You name it. So it is a drastic, I mean, I always tell people, people flock to the Maryland shore in the summertime to eat crab rolls and crab this and that. And it's all built around the crab industry. Go talk to someone who's crabbing or someone who owns a crab house on the Chesapeake. It's a giant estuary. And they will tell you that they have fewer and fewer employees. They can't get visas for them. Less and less crab are being harvested every year. More and more restaurants, because they're cheaper, bringing in blue swimmer crabs from Asia instead of blue crabs from the Chesapeake. We are killing now, the minute the crabs are not there and it costs too much and people have to charge someone $800 for a pair of crab cakes. And by the way, they can't get part-time servers because it's a tourism-generated summertime business. you will lose. I think Chesapeake Bay, when we did the research, and this is 4 years ago when we were making What's Eating America, I think is something like $6 billion a year goes into Maryland through people who are going there to eat crab. It's a food. I mean, we cannot allow the entire Chesapeake estuary to collapse economically because we can't give support to food workers and restaurants that are there. It's vitally important, as well as the crab fishers that are in desperate need of help. The idea that we would give crop insurance to a field to freight farmer in Texas who grows soybeans or corn or cotton, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. And we would not give crop insurance and make it available to crabbers in the Chesapeake Bay, as an example, or people growing food fit for human consumption, which is this tiny little small window of food, boggles my mind. We have to be paying attention to them federally. And that's everyone in that restaurant chain, from the time it gets put on a plate in front of a customer, working backwards all the way to the field, the farm, the body of water, wherever that food came from. We're doing a really shitty job of caretaking that sector of our economy.
Who is the person that you've hired that has transformed your business?
I would have to go with Pat Weiland, who I hired to run intuitive content as a leader. And I think this is something that anyone can relate to if you own or manage a business. You need to have someone you trust handling stuff for you where you don't have to manage them. They can report into you. Now, that's the dream. It doesn't mean we're without struggles or disagreement, but I think that hire was vitally important for me in the success of my businesses.
Love it. Okay, number 2 is on marketing. What is the best marketing decision that you've ever made for your business?
That it needs to be prioritized.
Marketing in general.
Yeah. Most people undervalue it and they come to it last because it's more important to have expensive wallpaper and an expensive chair in their restaurant. I probably have an argument about marketing and comms budgets. With every single deal that I do about 45 to 51 on average a year. We have a tracker that keeps track of this. There is not a single deal that I do in any of my 3 or 4 businesses that where I am not acutely aware that I am the person arguing for there being a marketing and comms budget sufficient to make us stand out from everyone else. The idea that if you build it, they will come is the stupidest business decision of all time. That worked in a movie called Field of Dreams with ghosts. Yeah. Okay. I love that movie. I love that line. It is an entertainment. It is a fiction. There are other lessons to be learned in there about fathers and sons and how we relate to a game in a life that we have very little short time to enjoy, average of 74 or 5 years or whatever. But marketing comms is the most overlooked part of every single business. And the ones that don't understand that and prioritize it are shooting themselves in the foot.
Last question. What is the one tool you use every day?
Wow. The one tool I use, well, it's the only tool that I religiously use every single day. And that is a how I wake up and start my day. And I've done it for 32 and a half years, and it's the only way that I get my head right. And if you don't have a morning routine that gets your head right and takes, look, I tell people all the time, we've all survived 100% of our worst days, and the future is friendly. Yet, all of us as human beings, I've never had a heart-to-heart with anyone who doesn't wake up in the middle of the night, and it's the 3 happiest thoughts do not creep into your head in the middle of the night. it is always 3 very scary stories that we tell ourselves. Always.
That's right. That's right.
And that's true for every human being. So you have to do something in the morning. And I'd incorporate a little bit from here, a little bit from there, a little bit from this person, a little bit from that person. And it's 10, 12 minutes of just me time that reminds me of all that. And I will say, and it's, Mel Robbins, famously sort of codified it for us with her high five yourself in the morning. She has a whole other bunch of stuff that goes with that. But, if you don't high five, figure out a way to high five yourself in the morning and to get rid of all that scary stuff and start your day in a place of positivity, then you're not going to solve a lot of problems. You're not going to be useful to other people. You're not going to enjoy yourself. When I start my way that day,
pages 86 to 88 in the morning?
Some of it, but I don't have to read it anymore. At a certain point, you read that stuff so many times, I hate to say it, but you can recite those pages. That spiritual practice began with what my spiritual gurus in my 12-step program taught me to do. Right.
Yeah.
And when you start your day, by creating an awareness of gratitude in your life, and you self-center yourself and get away from self-centeredness, your day goes well. My shitty days are the 2 or 3 times a month where I forget to do that entirely, and I'm just running on
fumes.
I'm just focused on all the problems and my own fumes and all the rest of that stuff. And look, we've talked about a lot of big ideas, today, and I'm sure I've been a huge distraction to the listeners. I know there's a lot of people in the hospitality business who tune into Restaurant Ready, and it is, these things can all be applied to one's business, and they can all be applied to oneself, and to make yourself available to those other people. Because at the end of the day, our businesses, restaurants and food businesses, rely on people. They are people businesses. It is how you reflect what you want to communicate, marketing, outwardly to the public, but also inwardly what you want to be to your staff. And unless you become the person you want to look up to, no one is ever going to look up to you. They're never going to take you seriously. You look at the Danny Myers of the world, and the Kevin Bames, and the Will Guidaras, and other famous operators, the Donnie Medias, and all these other people who, Simon Kim, and all these restaurateurs that have restaurants after restaurant after restaurant. The one thing that they all have in common, incredibly, is that everyone in their organization loves looking up to them, loves it. And the people from afar want to manage like them. There was like, what trick do you have? It's got to be something with the bookkeeping, or the menus your chefs write, or something like that. And it's not. They are just excellent. They have made it their business to become excellent people. Then you have something to give away to everyone else. And I can't stress that enough. You become the most excellent person you can, and your business will follow after that lead. Always, every time, especially when you're in a people business. If you're in a bad mood, you can do all the table touching you want. You're just going to communicate negativity. That's all you're going to communicate.
100%. Yeah. 100%.